there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com, here with another very kind of sensitive issue, I would say, or at least tricky issue to talk about. But you know me, I'm going to just dive right in and get down to it and, of course, give my opinion because that's the only thing I know how to do in life. So I'm a little late to the party. All of this happened about a week ago, but the discussion came up at my local game store last night. Of course, we were playing Modern, and we started talking about Eldrazi, and then the discussion turned to, does Wizards do this on purpose, and Wizards is just trying to sell stuff, and Expeditions are a joke because it's just to sell packs, and blah, 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 blah. And really, the price of Magic is too high, and that Wizards of the Coast is just trying to sell packs and protect collectors. That's why they keep the reserve list. You know, all of the usual suspects of this whole argument came up. And it really, I found myself defending Wizards of the Coast again, which this is two in a row. Uh-oh. I better be careful because if you're not familiar with my channel, I've probably been the most outspoken YouTuber when it comes to Wizards of the Coast. I'm a very opinionated person, and I don't know how to keep my mouth shut. Two very, very big flaws I know with a society that likes to keep things kind of kosher. So, last one that I was on the Wizards of the Coast side was about the Eldrazi in Modern and how that wasn't something they did on purpose to sell Oath of the Gatewatch packs. I'm still gonna I still am under that same opinion. And now this all started. Let's do a little background of how this all started on, at least on social media. So Tolarian Community College he has a kind of opinion piece he calls Tolarian Wins, where he talks about how the event decks and Clash packs discontinued is bad for the game, or how they at least should have made a product that was at least more focused on achieving a goal or a thesis in his opinion, which is put players first, and how those products didn't put players first and they're trying to really do too many things. And then there was this post on Mark Rosenwalder's Blogatog that basically says, hey, can you address this? Can you address what Community College says? That this person that asked the question also says that this resonates with him, that he also believes that there should be like a very focused reason to doing something. And Mark Rosenwalder, he put out a great, I'm just going to read it here. He says, we always put players first. The biggest flaw in the argument of the video is that players are somehow a separate entity from collectors, as if the two have no overlap. In reality, the collector isn't a player, is a tiny, tiny minority. Of all the themes I talk about, the theme of not all players share your priorities is one of the ones that comes up the most. The video assumes that all players share the professor's priorities, as if putting the players first has a singular meaning. Some players, such as yourself, strongly agree with the professor. Others strongly disagree. But people look around in an echo chamber that is social media and get the feeling that the majority share their viewpoint, when in reality we have discovered through extensive market research that players have very split priorities. This is what makes our job so difficult. We want to make all of you happy, even though you often want very different things. That's why issues such as this are so complex, as the easy fix is seldom practical. And that perfectly. Now, I used to be a very tunnel vision person with, this is the way you should play Magic the Gathering. I have a YouTube channel called Rogue Deck Builder. I believe in deck building is the #1 achievement or the #1 reason to play Magic the Gathering, and playing is a byproduct or a secondary reason. And I consider myself a Johnny Spike. I think that that are Johnny Spikes are a very, very, very minority of the entire population of Magic. And then Spikes or competitive Spikes are a minority too. This is kind of like, I've talked about how out of touch the pro scene is with just the game, just the average Magic player. And I often see, we see the backlash that happens when these pro players make some statements that just kind of show their snootiness or kind of show their big egos and this is the way the game should be played, and forget about the little guy or forget about all the bazillion other reasons that people play Magic the Gathering, and only think that the competitive scene, trumps everything else, which is just plain ridiculous in a 20 million player group. And then you have casuals, or let's just look at my local game store. We have people who come in, buy packs, go home, play with their family. They don't want to have anything to do with the local game store other than we provide cheaper prices than Walmart. Then we have our Commander players that we have to beg to play in competitive events. Sometimes we need to like even out the pods so that people don't get buys, and we have to beg the commander players to play in the like Friday Night Magics and standard or modern. And then we have our competitive players that kind of turn up their noses to casual players and make fun of people for their casual decks or their bad combos and blah blah blah, or just make fun of commander players so they don't see the point to playing commander. And there are so many different ways to play Magic the Gathering. That's what makes the game so beautiful. And so to just try to throw out what Mero says, this just complete blanket one size fits all is not practical whatsoever in Magic the Gathering. And what I like so much about this is his post here is that the biggest flaw in this argument of the video is that players somehow separate the entity from collectors to players. And that I do not know one person. Everyone has a binder. You have a trade binder. This is a collectible card game. There is no such thing as just a player. I am a collector. Man, you should see my massive collection of cards, which again I'm going to be selling them. So let me just talk about that real quick. I'm trying to do a fundraiser, and the price of modern is just way too high, and so I will be getting rid of my modern decks and a few commander decks and some standard decks, because I personally cannot justify that amount of money being tied up in cardboard. So the price of Magic has become too high. It's come to a price point where I am getting out of paper. Now don't worry, I'm not quitting Magic, far from it. The whole reasoning that we're doing this fundraiser is Rogue Deck Builder, the whole brand, is completely out of money. I need more money for MTGO tickets to do more videos. We need an editing computer so desperately down at the store, because it's just too much of a hassle to run between the store, where we use a crappy laptop, to home, where I have my editing computer, and then back and forth, back and forth. It took us over 16 hours to produce that Commander video, and that's kind of the direction I want to go with Rogue Deck Builder, is higher quality videos. And we need some capital to do that. So I'm looking at these decks. I'm looking at Living End and Soul Sisters and Tooth and Nail and 8-Rack, all these decks that were actually very cheap to build 2-3 years ago, which have now come over the price of $400, $500. I sell all of those. There's my editing computer, and I can't justify. Like here's my priorities. So I'll be announcing that later. If you want to help the channel out, I'm going to be auctioning off all my decks. I have some people already upset with me because the Soul Sisters deck particularly is the deck that has it's won me a lot of tournaments and actually got me on the Pro Tour, and you could say really catalyzed my YouTube and my Rogue Deck Builder career. But I have no real attachment to sentimental things. There's like one card I think I've kept in a case, and that was the very first card I drafted at my Pro Tour, which I might put up for auction as well. So it's a Ral Zarek that's Pro Tour stamped. Anyway, I'll talk a whole video about that later on. But it just brings to the point that this is a very, very sensitive subject. This is a very fine line, just like Mark Rosewater states here. You can't just do these massive reprints and say the player out trumps the collector. Or I think that just like targeting Wizards here and saying, oh, you're just trying to protect people's collections in the reserve list and these big bad evil vendors. You're butting up with Star City Games and butting up with the big guy and letting the little guy just... No. The main reason that prices have skyrocketed is we went from 2 million players, not only like 6 years ago or something like that. It was like 5 or 6 years ago. We were only at 2 million players, active players. Then to 4 million with Scars and Mirrodin. Then 8 million with at the end of Return to Ravnica. Then I think it was like 15 million at the end of Theros. And now I've heard reports we're up to 20 million people. Modern is very scarce compared to the newer sets, just because we've had a tenfold increase in players. And that is what's caused the price. Yes, they need to address that. But this is incredibly hard for Wizards to address. And it goes beyond just trying to protect players' collections. Now, the second video I want to talk about is... I hope I'm not so scattered, because I started doing a video and then I was rambling too much, so I quit it. And now I'm back to trying to record, so I can't remember what I've talked about. But anyway, there's another post about this beautiful video about Richard Garfield when he created Magic the Gathering. He wanted he wanted it to be a collectible card game. He wanted people to pick up dollar cards and then have them worth like $10, $15 a couple few years later and have it be like stamps. But he also empathizes with if the value of a card ever goes above $20, that it's gonna be too hard for players to actually afford it, to actually play the game. And I'll link a video to link to this video in the description, as well as the video to the Tolarian Community College video, and you can make your own mind up here. But I think that I'm really on the side of Wizards of the Coast again here, and not on the side of like the community outrage about. I mean, I made a video about how Modern is too damn high, and how there needs to be reprints. But I am gonna go back and say I'm defending Wizards here. I don't think they're being nefarious or evil here and just worrying too much about their pocketbooks. They are a company, of course they need to make profit, but the health of their game is #1 priority. Everyone that I will never, ever, 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 ever be under the impression or under the whole mentality that corporations are evil and out there just, yes, of course profit is their #1 goal, but the reason why anyone gets into business, or the reason why anyone creates anything, is they actually have a vision and usually a love for the product. If you talk about most entrepreneurs, they love their product. And I don't think that's, of course, that's not anything different from Magic. Everyone that works at Wizards of the Coast, I guarantee you, loves the game. Otherwise, they wouldn't be working for Wizards of the Coast, who notoriously pays their employees pretty crap compared to the market. They're in it because of the game. I'm sure Mero loves the game. I'm sure all the other designers love the game, and that's their #1 goal. So it's, yes, there needs to be reprints addressed. I think TCC is wrong here. I think that Wizards is putting players first. And again, I have never met someone that is either a player or you don't have to. It's like, I am a collector, I am a player, and there's this big war going on. Here, just look at me personally. I am a rogue brewer who goes through tons of different decks. I am a little bit of a Timmy because I get attached to perfect decks. I have a massive collection because I like collecting. I think that's one of the appeals to Magic the Gathering. I am a massive speculator. I own over 400 copies of Tidebinder Mage right now. So I'm playing on certain prices, but usually I buy in when low and then sell. I sell pretty fast. Like I got out of Stony Silence probably way too quickly. Now that they're over like $12 a piece. Yeah, I should have waited. But anyway, so most of us are collectors, and if Wizards was just to massively reproduce a bunch of cards, I think I'd be pretty ticked off if my $1,000 deck went down to $200. I think the majority of us would be pretty ticked off. But there needs to be a price point. There needs to be a line in the sand where they're like, okay, if a rare ever gets over $20, it needs to be a reprint. I think that's very, that makes sense to me. If a mythic ever gets over $40 or $45 or $50, whatever the price point is, it needs a reprint. $150 Tarmogoyfs, yeah, that's crazy. $120 Lilianas, that's crazy. Fetch lands, the mana base. If I were to say mass reprints and why I'm very disappointed about like the commander decks not having a fetch land from Zendikar, and why people think I was crazy for that because people just buy them up, sure, let people buy them up, and then the price of the Zendikar fetch lands would have stabilized at $10, and our mana base would have been cut in half at least. The mana base is the big issue with Legacy, Modern, and Standard right now. Let's just look at it. The main problem with any of these formats is going to be the mana base. So let's just look at Kiki Cord. It's a $1,100 deck, and the mana base right here is $300, $400. Yep, there's half your money is in the mana base. So if they can fix the mana base being cheaper, then the price of Modern would easily go down, I would say between 35 and 40%, all the way up to 50%, because that is the huge problem with the format. Another thing is when they let like Path to Exiles get out of control. I mean, Path to Exiles at almost $10 a piece for an uncommon. Eternal Witnesses are now up to like $5 a piece, and they keep reprinting them and reprinting them and reprinting them. That's uncommons. They need to have a price point for that as well. Is $5 too much for an uncommon? Okay, we need to aggressively reprint when they go above $5. Is $2 too much for a common? Okay, we need to aggressively reprint them. So I think for me personally, that would be my little benchmarks is 2, 5, 20, and 50. For the respected. And here's lastly, let me talk. I know I've been rambling on for over 15 minutes now about this subject, But lastly, a lot of people have been upset about like expeditions. I've been calling for those type of cards forever. I think that this makes it, let the collectors open up a bunch of packs and flood the market with cards for players just to find their shiny cards. I hate foils. Have you seen the latest foils? We just opened up, I believe it was a Sacred Foundry out of Battle for Zendikar, and the card was already in terrible shape. Like it had already had the black had already been starting to go off the sides of the card. Or like we have a foils binder, everything is so warped. I don't know. I need to figure out a better way to, maybe we just need to put like hard cases immediately in a lot of our foils. But in my dry climate, the foils just warp so quickly. I've had to replace cards out of my deck because you can tell what the foils are, and I absolutely hate foils. So give the collectors something to collect, and I think they'll be happy with that. I don't think anyone needs to aggressively reprint an expedition. Let the expedition stay a lot of money. But players do need to be able to get into Modern and Standard for less than $500 and $1,000 respectively. I think that Standard should be around $300 maximum for the Tier 1 deck, and then Modern should be maybe $700 should be the price point that they should never want to get above. And we're seeing Standard decks at $800, Modern decks at $2,000. That's just way too much. Way too much for a game to continue to stay healthy. We've started to see like options, secondary options in decks rather than the primary. Like instead of Verdant Catacombs, a lot of people just run one of the fetch lands that's a lot cheaper. And I think that should never be a choice in a competitive game, is if you have to decide to use something that's not as powerful because you can't afford it. But there needs to be that collectible aspect to it. There needs to be a choice, and I have to pay this amount, but it can't be in the thousands. Thousands is just too much, and that is why I am a huge player. I don't know that I'm in the 1%. I guarantee that, of how much time I spend playing Magic the Gathering and focusing on Magic the Gathering compared to the rest of the people that play it. And if I'm getting out of paper cards, even though this is part of my livelihood, because it's just too much, the cards are worth too much, then I think there's a huge issue. So I hope I've addressed some topics. I'm going to relook through the video, and if I've missed another topic, then we'll go back and do some more. But I just want to know your opinions. I'll link the blog, the Richard Garfield video, and the Tulare Community College video in the description below, and let me know what you think about it. And just to wrap it up, I think that, can we please attack Wizards of the Coast when it's relevant? I mean, when it's justified. The company, just go back on some of my videos, and you can see how critical I've been of Wizards of the Coast. You're not going to get any sympathy from me when it comes to some of the wrongs that they've done. This is not one of them. This is a very sensitive thing for Wizards to try to figure out where they can reprint. Man, that last event deck killed prices on certain cards. We have Whispering Elemental, Whisperwood Elemental, that's under $1 now. A Mythic that is under $1. Damn straight they better be very careful about reprinting cards when they can take a value of a Mythic down from, I think it was like $8 down to under $1 because of a supplemental product. So yeah, there's real consequences to this, and it's not just about trying to keep collectors and big vendors happy. Anyway, this has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.